I do these hacks, a lot of times I have my horses out here in the cross ties and we need different angles, we need them to do different things. And this is my most impatient horse. He's the one that paws. When I first got this horse about 4 years ago, he came out of a show barn. He came out of a show barn, and even on the cross ties, if the back panel wasn't closed off on the cross ties, he would threaten to pull back, he would paw, he would stick his head up. He had all kinds of poor behavior on the cross ties. And it can become really dangerous if they don't tie quietly. So to teach a horse to tie, whether it's to a trailer or a hitching rail or cross ties, the first thing you need to do is work on the speed of halt, right? So halt is a gait, it's a speed. We need halt for saddling, grooming, mounting, tying, and doing lots of things. So if they're impatient at halt, then what I end up doing is as you've seen, I kind of throw the lead rope over my hands. And the first few sessions I had with him, I might have to stand and face him, and every time he would walk forward, I would just gently ask him to walk back. If he starts pawing, I could ask him to take a step back, and all that's doing is interrupting the thought for a moment and helping them relax a little bit, because the pawing that he does is sort of the last of his impatience and nervousness. I know, I always have a big bag of treats. And this is how you teach a horse to cross tie. So when you give treats, there's nothing wrong with giving treats, but you're reinforcing whatever the current thought is in their head. So if they're anxious, you're reinforcing anxiety. If they're tense and invasive, you're reinforcing that thought, right? So most treat giving, there's nothing wrong with giving treats. I spoil my horses rotten, but I want to see that they're calm, that they're kind of paying attention to me, that they're willing to try to do what I ask. So I'm going to time this. He's very calm. He knows the treats are here. And right now his feet are quiet. So I'm going to give him a treat. I'm going to reward the lead rope on the ground, right, and quiet feet. Right? Then I'm going to do something else. So I'm just going to put the treats in my pocket, and I'm going to maybe simulate, could I groom him, and does he continue to patiently stand still? So I don't want to get too involved until I know the horse can do it. But could I walk all the way around the horse with the lead rope on the ground? Right? If stepping on it scares them, you can either hold the lead rope in your hand, you could throw the lead rope over their neck so that they don't step on it, but in some way you want him to know it's his job. It's not the cross tie's job to hold him still, it's his job to stay still, and then I cross tie him. So if I get all the way around him, ooh, another treat, right? So that's called positive reinforcement. That's all it is. It's what they use in operant conditioning for training large marine mammals and zoo animals that can't be handled easily, right? And so I want him to use his mind. This represents a paycheck, right? So what does he have to do for the paycheck is the question. And when you watch the energy level, it's not the behavior, like he's sort of nibbling at me, he's getting impatient, but he's not pushing through the boundary. He's not trying to bite me, he's not threatening me, he's not getting tense, he's not pinning his ears. There's the pawing, so I put the treat back in my pocket and do something else, right? So he has to work for the treat. There's something he has to do. And when you use treats that way, you can be really creative. So if I'm teaching a horse to stand still in a wash rack, right, I can use treats to that end. And I test him in small ways, like walking around, doing something else. Oh, maybe I even ask him to step over and see if he stays or if he leaves, right? So if he listened to that instruction and he stayed, head down, I know, nice and calm. And you can see this horse was given treats when he was in a state of anxiety. And so the more I give him treats, you can see he starts to get more anxious and more anxious. So there's two ways I've addressed this. One way is what I'm showing you now. right? He has to do a little job. He has to use his brain to figure out, as long as he's increasing anxiety, no treats. When he starts to decrease anxiety, or if he does something I want, right? Like I'm going to ask him just to pick up this foot. Can he stay still while I pick up the foot? Good. Let me try a hind foot. Excellent. So if he does that, he knows he gets a treat. Right? So I'm giving him little tasks and testing his ability to maintain halt in self-carriage without relying on the ties. And if he gets a little sideways or a little too far back, I can take a moment, step him back up to where the cross ties would be, and start over. Right? But he has to do something to earn that paycheck. And I can be creative with whatever it is I want to do. The only other way is because he was so anxious, it really triggered high anxiety when I first would give him treats. And he would paw, he would get worse and worse with every treat. So the other strategy I took, and you can use carrots, you can use low sugar treats, you can use something that's safe to feed a lot to the horse. These treats are not so safe to feed over and over and over. But one of the things I did was I just stood here and plied him with more treats than he wanted to eat. Right? So you want to find something that's safe for the horse to eat. Right? But if I just keep giving treats, you can see the anxiety level actually starts to come down. Right? So it's a little bit of reverse psychology. Because technically, you're rewarding what's in the mind when you give treats. But if a horse is really bad to bridle, really anxious about treats, if they turn around, like when I go to girth, some horses will turn around and try to bite when you pull up the girth strap. I usually have a treat, and they don't know what to do. If they whip their head around to bite me and I hand them a treat, it disrupts the thought, right? So there's only two strategies for using treats. One is reward the energy or the thought that you do want. And it's more about energy than it is action, right? So the behavior is driven energetically. So you can see he's getting anxious again. So I have an option here. It used to be really bad. This is nothing. But when it was really bad, I just kept feeding him treats, right? And as I fed more and more and more treats, the energy level came down. And then we were done. I put him away. We did what we needed to do. But you can see, by giving him, by sort of satiating and flooding him with too many treats, he actually, it can calm them down. But this is constant. So you want to play with both ways of giving treats. I did use this strategy with a draft horse that was terrified of farriers. And the whole time the farrier was there, I was holding her and just plying her with peppermints. It worked beautifully. She was able to handle the farrier and get her feet done, even shoes on. But she ended up having a tooth removed because she did get a cavity. So choose what you're feeding as the treats wisely. Make sure it's not too much sugar or not too bad for them, especially if they have metabolic issues. I know. But if you want to teach them to stay with you, you can see, right? So now I'm done with the flooding of treats and his anxiety increases. So now I have to balance that with there are no more treats and stay here and wait until that anxiety starts to reduce, right? So I'm not going to ask him to do a job. I'm not going to ask him to do anything. I'm just going to ask him to stand here. I can hold the lead rope, I can put the lead rope over his neck, but I don't want the treats to invite aggression, right? So as soon as I stop, and if he continues with the anxiety, then doing nothing is going to help them come down sooner than later. And I've already taught him that if he does something for me, he gets a treat. So when I take away the flooding of treats, right, even if he paws, if he acts frustrated, if he acts anxious, I just stand here, I ask nothing of him, I do nothing. He's doing his job of maintaining halt, so I don't need any corrections. I'm telling him he can touch me. I'm not punishing him for what he's doing, but I'm saying, okay, enough's enough. So I'm just using my fingertips to say, that's my personal space, that's a little close. And then I wait, because if I put him away or I end the session in this state of anxiety, that's exactly how you associate treats with anxiety or treats with tension. So you're rewarding what's ever in the mind when you give a positive reinforcement. A negative reinforcement is what I'm doing now, like correcting or asking him to move or asking him to do something, like just lifting the lead rope. That's a negative reinforcement that's saying, don't put your head down. So a positive reinforcement is just rewarding what he's already doing. So by doing nothing, right, there is no wrong answer, and there really is no right answer. I'm just waiting for this anxious energy to kind of come down a notch or two, and then we'll be done. Yes, you're a good boy.